Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. It is Season 4, Episode 39. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
The Steelers overcome a slow start on Monday Night Football in Week 8, and they're able to defeat the winless Miami Dolphins by a final score of 27-14. Not the prettiest game we've ever seen, and it was actually quite an ugly start, but at the end of the day, the Steelers are now just one game under 500 after starting 0-3 and 1-4 on the season, and now we'll look to finish the first half of the season with a 500 record of 4-4. Kind of crazy to think that the Steelers could be looking at that after the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I mean, they've had an easier schedule since then, and honestly, we could have been looking at 4-3 right now if not for the Ravens game, and it wouldn't have been out of the question, and they could have been basically at the top. I'm sorry, not basically. They would have been at the top of their division due to the tiebreaker with the Ravens if that game was different. So it's just so weird how the Steelers season has gone.
What would we be saying right now if the Steelers were leading the division? I mean, my goodness. You think about it, that Ola Adeniyi call really impacted the outcome of that game. How much do narratives change?
You know what's funny? I'm not sure it would change much of the narrative with Pittsburgh. I think everyone would look at them the same. I think the narrative with Baltimore would change more than anything. I think people would be talking about AFC North and Baltimore Ravens being terrible as a whole. You have a whole bunch of trash teams. I feel like the Steelers aren't getting like any respect right now, and they don't deserve it. I'm not trying to say that they do. But if the Ravens lost there, they would have been getting it even worse because they are respected. They're considered a top team, and they rank high in the offensive rankings and stuff. But I'm pretty sure it would just take down their image. I'm pretty sure nothing would really change for the Steelers right now other than, okay, cool, we're in front of the division now, and you got till Week 17 till you versus the Ravens again. You just got to keep winning.
I will say one thing, that winning in Seattle was huge for Baltimore, and even if they might not be viewed as good, of course, I still think that a win in Seattle would raise some eyebrows regardless.
Yeah, you're right. You make a good point there because people do respect the Seahawks. But I don't know. I still think the Baltimore would come crashing down from where they are if they had lost to Pittsburgh.
We'll learn a lot about the Ravens next week, but we can get into that later. For now, of course, we are talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I guess one way that we can kind of make things simple for the Steelers, they're not really considered contenders right now, and like you had kind of alluded to, they don't really deserve to be right now, but let's keep it simplified here for an outlook, and I'm not saying this is going to be easy, but the outlook, of course, with that clash with the Baltimore Ravens at the end of the season, Week 17 in Baltimore, the Steelers just need to be a game behind the Ravens. They need to be a game behind the Ravens in order to make that a de facto championship game for the AFC North. They also need to have a better division record than the Ravens, so in essence they need to beat the Bengals one more time and then sweep the Browns. Again, easier said than done, and stay at least within one game of the Ravens. So if you want to take it a very simplified look at the AFC North, you have to beat the Bengals one more time, beat the Browns twice, and then stay within one game of the Ravens going into that last week. I don't know if you've heard it explained that way, but that's really about as simple as you can put it.
It's going to be interesting still because then in that game they would still go to, since they both have the same amount of head-to-head, they would both have the same division record within your model there because, oh no, they wouldn't. I forgot.
They lost to the Browns. Yep.
I forgot that happened. Okay, never mind. You are exactly correct. I was thinking that they would have that and would go down to conference record, but you're right. I'm sorry.
No, it's fair to think because the Browns have struggled so much. That was the Browns' last win, as a matter of fact, was that win over the Ravens. It feels like forever ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
But in any case, if you want to look at the Steelers' outlook the rest of the year, obviously it's a game-by-game basis. But if you're looking big picture, that's what you need to be thinking about. So just food for thought there. The whole year has been just, the victories the Steelers have come at high prices. And although there haven't been any significantly long injuries, it seems, from this game, there were a number of injuries, and I'll just jump right into that. The first and foremost, it's James Conner, banged up yet again. He sprained his AC joint towards the end of Monday night's game. It looked like, if you were lip reading, that someone had mentioned clavicle, so that was the early speculation, but Mike Tomlin said in his post-game press conference that it was an AC joint injury, and he expects to be a game-time decision for next week's game. He said so on his on a radio show, and he did not practice on Wednesday. So, did you have a problem with James Conner being in the game that late? I didn't really think about it until someone brought it up to me today.
No, I really didn't. I feel like he was fine to finish the game. I mean, it's just unfortunate he got hurt, but I thought it was fine that he was finishing out the game. I don't know. I didn't really think much of it. What did you think?
I didn't think much of it either, because I'm pretty sure Benny Snell was already hurt at this point too.
Yeah, so it was, you could rush with Trey Edmonds or use James Conner, and James Conner was doing fine. It's just, you don't expect an injury to happen,
So the aforementioned Benny Snell left with a knee injury. His knee injury might be a little more significant than Connor's AC joint injury, and that might keep him out of next week's game. He did not practice on Wednesday as well. Snell would be needing more practice time, Mike Tomlin alluded to, than James Conner, because Conner is a seasoned veteran while Snell is a rookie. So if both guys had a coin flip chance to play and the other would sit, I would lean in terms of James Conner, A, because he's the starter, but also B, because he has less of a need for those practice reps and therefore could theoretically sit out, practice more or at least longer than Benny Snell could still be able to produce on game day. So I think that's the thought process there. Any concerns with Benny Snell right now?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be good. Definitely not for this week. I think he could miss even a few weeks, but we don't even really know what his knee injury is. It doesn't. Whenever you hurt your knee, it's not a good thing. Obviously, Jalen Samuels is just coming off of that an injury in his knee, but I'm not expecting Benny Snell to be rushed back quite yet. Definitely not this week.
And speaking of Samuels, he could not be coming back at a better time. He practiced in full at the end of the week last week and was again in full participation on Wednesday. And with the uncertainty with Conner and Snell, it looks like this could be a huge week for Jalen Samuels.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Definitely go pick up Jalen Samuels in your fantasy football leagues, boyos.
Ramon Foster left the game with a concussion. He did not open up the second half on the field. B.J. Finney replaced him. Didn't practice on Wednesday either. I still have not seen the play where this could have happened.
Yeah, me neither. This was kind of confusing. I don't even remember Ramon Foster leaving. Obviously, David DeCastro left, which was scary for a moment or two, and then he just came back 3 plays later. But I don't know. I guess maybe after the game he was showing signs of a concussion, and they diagnosed him with one. It's just interesting. I never saw it.
More injuries along the interior of the offensive line. Marquise Pouncey had suffered a calf injury. It's not expected to be serious, as he did play through it, but he didn't practice on Wednesday either, so something to keep an eye on there. And defensive tackle Daniel McCullers had an ankle injury and didn't practice on Wednesday. I don't think he played a lot of snaps anyways, so the ankle injury could be something that keeps him out longer term, which, an already thin defensive line, that would concern you even more, having to activate a guy like Buggs, who played last week, and L.T. Walton, and they may both have to play significant snaps if McCullers can't go this week.
Yeah, that's a big L right there. Not just to depth, really. It sucks that he came on the defensive line, but, hopefully he's feeling better by the end of the week. Obviously, it's just Wednesday, and hopefully we see him practicing by the end of the week.
Last note for injuries, Ulysses Gilbert III was a limited participant at the end of the week last week and did not play against the Dolphins. He is still limited on Wednesday. So that wraps up the injury report. So this game against the Dolphins, it had a very similar starting script to what we've seen when it comes to the Steelers playing against poor quality opponents and coming off extended rest, particularly coming out of the bye. This game can really be broken up into the first quarter and a half and the final 2.5 quarters, and just the night and day that we saw from this Steelers team. The opening drive for the offense, man, my goodness. Mason Rudolph threw a terrible interception, and he looked about as rusty and as skittish as I think I've ever seen a young quarterback look. He did not look comfortable out there. He was holding onto the ball too long, taking too long to go through his reads, taking too long to make his decisions, making throws that were bad. His throws were off target. They were too high. They were too far behind guys. They were getting knocked down, getting picked off. He was getting hit too often. So it was just all around, Mason Rudolph, if you have to point the finger at one guy for someone who was struggling early in the game, it was Mason Rudolph. And I'm not trying to say I don't understand I don't get what he went through. I can't even imagine having to come back from what he came back after fighting through with that concussion, but he did struggle mightily early on Monday night.
Oh, 100%. I believe he started 2 for 8 or 2 for 9 on his throws. It was just not good. And when your first pass of the game, is intercepted, it's already not good. And it wasn't even a good, it was a bad interception is what I'm trying to say. It wasn't like a good read or anything, and the Dolphin made a great play. No, it was just a really bad throw.
It was a bad throw, and it was also a bad decision. It was one that he put too much air under in the middle, not the middle, but still in right around the hash marks. A bad throw and a bad decision. People were blaming Marquise Pouncey for getting walked back into Rudolph. Mind you, Rudolph had about 4 or 5 seconds to throw the ball. He still could have bought more time. So that's just a young quarterback going through some growing pains. And another thing I wanted to point out is that early in this game, it felt like Rudolph was going at Xavier Howard way too much. I'm not sure what you could have possibly gained by doing that. He's their best player by far.
Yeah, I don't know what was the problem. Something I noticed with Mason Rudolph was that he was holding on to the ball for so long early on, especially in that first half. For a little bit, I was like, wow, the offensive line isn't playing good. And then, as I, focused in and was, watching, no, Mason Rudolph is holding the ball for way too long. I felt like on both his sacks, it was because he just kept holding on to the ball. But going back to what you said, you don't typically attack a team right where they're strong when you have 2 other options. I mean, Xavier Howard might have just been coming off an injury, but he is still a very good cornerback and probably top 5 in the league when he's healthy. So I thought that was a mistake as well, and it came back to bite them on that first play of the game, when he picked it straight off. But, luckily, as the game went on, Mason Rudolph calmed down and got a little bit better.
Indeed, he did, but the defense also didn't really hold up their end of the bargain early on, too. Yes, Rudolph with the interception set up the Dolphins in an ideal situation, but they were able to convert that into points, and after turning the ball over on downs on their next offensive possession, the Dolphins were able to go 11 plays down the field in 6 minutes, 63 yards, and took a 14-0 lead on one of the worst tackling efforts I've ever seen the Steelers have to make on that touchdown pass to Allen Hurns, where Devin Bush, Mark Barron, and a couple other Steelers were unable to bring down Hurns, and he scoots into the end zone. How are you feeling at this point?
I was about ready to just find the nearest bridge and just jump off of it with some concrete tied to my shoes. It was about exactly what I expected. Obviously, with everything going for them into this game, all the superlatives, that they were 4-0 in their color rush, they were 6-0 against Ryan Fitzpatrick, or 7-0. They had never lost on Monday Night Football under Mike Tomlin, and they were 18-0 in their last 18 matchups on Monday Night Football. It's just all of that considered, and you're going up against an 0-17 team that's been trying to lose, literally trying. And down 14-0 is just this is about what I expected out of Pittsburgh right now. But how are you feeling?
Not great. One thing that I did notice on the defensive end is Ryan Fitzpatrick is a guy that gets a ton of crap sometimes, but he deserves a ton of credit for the way he played, particularly early. He made a ton of different calls at the line of scrimmage and made a ton of great plays to extend the play when he was under pressure or to make difficult throws. He really helped guide that team and will them to the first couple of scores here. One thing I noticed that I didn't like was that I felt like Keith Butler, again, waited too long to make adjustments with too much off coverage, particularly Preston Williams. I think it was Preston Williams, or maybe whoever Joe Hayden was on. I felt like Joe Hayden was getting beat a lot early in this game on those shallow slants, or you got these in-cutting routes. A lot of times there was too much off coverage, and I felt like the Dolphins were taking advantage. Now, the Steelers did adjust, but I felt like it should not have taken this, 2 different scoring drives for this to be a change to be made.
Yeah, early on they were attacking Joe Hayden. Joe Hayden actually finished the most tackles on the team. I don't know if you know that. And it's mostly because they were just straight up going at him with these off coverages because they know he's slower. And compared to the Dolphins wide receivers, like, it was a good matchup for them because of that. And so when Keith Butler wasn't adjusting and having them play off coverage, it was just go at Joe Hayden, go at Joe Hayden, go at Joe Hayden early on. Like you said, he changed that up, but that was a problem early on. I kept noticing. I was like, dang, Joe Hayden keeps getting beat, but like it was just because he was playing a lot of off coverage, and he just when he's not as fast as their wide receivers, it's just a really bad matchup for him. But luckily it did get fixed. As a lot of things in this game changed going into like the end of the second quarter, and then coming out of the half. That's when I felt like a lot of things changed.
The Steelers were only able to pick up 44 yards of offense through their first 3 drives. Part of the change occurred shortly before the half, but they were able to get a long drive that ended in 3 points, starting at their own 6-yard line. Starting deep in your own territory is tough, but when you start the way the Steelers' offense had started, I had very little confidence in facing a 3rd and 11 right after a poor decision from Rudolph to throw late in the play to Roosevelt Nix, and he didn't gain anything. You have Rudolph with one of his best, maybe not one of his best, but a really welcome sign. That throw to Deontay Johnson on the left sideline for 12 yards on that 3rd and 11, that was really when you felt like, okay, he's going to settle down and he's going to get things going. You know the play I'm talking about.
Yeah, it was almost in the Pittsburgh's end zone, right? They were at the Pittsburgh 5.
Yep,
right?
Rudolph was in the end zone when he made that throw.
Yeah, I remember that because I remember thinking, like, they're not going to get this, and this game is going to get out of control for Miami. But they got it, and then they were able to drive downfield. So
that drive stalled at the Miami Dolphins' 24-yard line. Chris Boswell remained perfect on the year, and then that's what led to an interception. And then that's now where we can – actually, I was going to say we had the 5 plays to circle, and we actually just went past the first one so that, that 3rd and 11 conversion from Rudolph to Deontay Johnson at the Steelers' 17-yard line. That one really changed the complexion of the game from the offense, and that's really where Mason Rudolph turned his night around. And I do want to say, for all the struggles that he did have on Monday night, and he didn't finish with a great stat line because of it, I thought he showed terrific mental toughness in this game, and the mental toughness that he displayed gives me hope going forward that I don't really have to worry about him mentally. I mean, it's all going to be just a physical thing with him. Can he make the big-time throws,
Yeah, and he was getting booed through this process at this point. Like, fans were very mad, which I honestly agree with. I think that they had a right to be mad. You're down 14-0 to the Dolphins. You're not able to get anything going on offense to this point besides, like, a field goal. Before actually when the field goal happened, everyone calmed down. But Mason Rudolph showed toughness, even getting through being booed and people calling for him to be benched. Not that he knew that at the time, but yeah, he's definitely a mentally tough dude.
Speaking of calls to get benched, did you buy into that at all? Were you in favor of going to Duck Hodges at this point?
No, I have no idea what fans thought Hodges showed against the Chargers. Like, that game was James Conner running, with Devlin Hodges just kind of standing there and just being like, yeah, I can stand here good. Which, not that I shouldn't take away from Devlin Hodges, but I had saw nothing from Devlin Hodges that proved to me he could do any better in that scenario where you need to bench Mason Rudolph, hurt his confidence like that, and just not let him go out and finish that game. Like, there was nothing in me that was like, yeah, Devlin Hodges is going to give the Steelers a better chance at winning this. I was not on that train. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's a very knee-jerk reaction, and, I mean, look how it played out. He bounced back, and what would have happened if the Steelers had put in Hodges, and, he plays maybe a little better, but what's the difference? Did the Steelers win that game? Probably not. And now you've got not a rookie, but a former third-round pick who was anointed to be the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger, whose confidence has to be shattered at this point.
Yeah, that would absolutely ruin him. I don't believe in. I don't care if Mason Rudolph throws 4 interceptions next week against the Colts. I don't want him benched at any point this year.
He is the guy, and we've been saying that the whole time, so that's not news to us, but for those who thought maybe the Steelers should go to Duck Hodges, unless if there's another injury to Rudolph, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, man. No way.
Plain and simple. But as we alluded to earlier, the Steelers were able to get 3 out of that next drive, and then the Steelers catch a break. This is play number 2 on our 5 plays to circle. A 2nd and 6 at the Dolphins 44 with under 2 minutes to go in the second quarter. The Dolphins have a chance to extend their lead, maybe go up 21-3. Ryan Fitzpatrick has a pass bounce off the hands of Nick O'Leary, the tight end, and it's picked off by Minkah Fitzpatrick at the Steelers' 44-yard line. Another huge play for the defense, who had struggled, been a little inconsistent over the course of the game to this point, but they were able to get one on Ryan Fitzpatrick, and they handed the ball back to their offense. And this is really where it felt like momentum was starting to turn, where the Steelers, at the very worst, were going to end up down by only 8 points going into halftime.
Yeah, that's poor. This one play got this poor man cut. Nick O'Leary was cut literally, I think Tuesday. It was Tuesday, not today. And that one play basically changed it all. It was great. It was the Fitzpatrick to Fitzpatrick action you wanted to see, and I think that we all wanted to see, really. And it definitely started, the comeback. It didn't start the comeback, but it made it feel real that the Steelers aren't done. They aren't rolling over. This game is still within reach because the Dolphins are still the Dolphins, and they will still make mistakes.
And that, of course, leads to probably the most talked about play from this entire game. A 3rd and 20 at the Dolphins' 45-yard line with 17 seconds left. For some reason, Brian Flores, the Dolphins head coach, decides to call for an all-out blitz. 8 men rushing the quarterback, only 3 guys on the route, playing in off coverage, and Deontay Johnson is, Mason Rudolph makes a great read, hits the guy hot on the slant, and that's Deontay Johnson, and he sprints down the left side, and he walks into the end zone after a fantastic block from James Washington into the end zone. And the Dolphins are left to wonder where things went wrong. And for those who question the Dolphins in terms of tanking, if we want to talk about players don't tank and coaches don't tank, those who say that the coaches were in on the act, this is ammunition for them, because who calls an all-out blitz on a 3rd and 20 where you absolutely can play the prevent-style defense?
Oh, this was 100%. This was a rookie mistake. This was like a high school football coach kind of mistake. I don't know. It's the mistakes I make in Madden. I don't know what he was thinking besides that I want to tank and lose and get that number 1 overall pick and give this team life. It was an absolutely terrible situation to put. I believe it was Xavier Howard who technically got burnt on that, but Xavier Howard was playing so far back that, how can you even blame him? It was the play call 100%. It was just terrible. I mean, thank you, Brian Flores, for doing it, but, it was 100%, an effort to lose. You don't call that. You're an NFL coach. You played under Belichick. You don't do something like that. I don't know. I think that's 100%, reason to give these conspiracy theorists that Dolphins are taking. They're giving them ammo. For sure.
You want to know what makes it even worse?
What?
The Dolphins called a timeout before that play.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was even, they thought about it. They sat down and were like, what would be great here? on 3rd and 22 and all-out blitz instead of defending the damn field.
I watched Johnson take the ball upfield, and I kept wondering, where's that next Dolphins player on the right side of the screen? Where's he going to show up? And he just never did.
Yeah, man. And this is the first time the Steelers got a touchdown on a 3rd and 20 or longer since 2007. That's not happened in a very long time for Pittsburgh.
This really felt like the turning point of the game, and once Johnson walked in for the touchdown, it was 14-10. I really felt like the Steelers were going to win the game at this point.
Oh, yeah, this felt like the game was coming straight back, 100%.
The Steelers take the opening drive of the second half down the field, but it stalls at the Dolphins' 36-yard line. A 4th and 7. Do you have a problem? I know you kind of alluded to this on Twitter, but you don't have a problem with the Steelers attempting a 54-yard field goal for Boswell in that situation, down by 4?
No, I actually liked that. I felt like that the Steelers could still win here, and I thought that, hey, why not give your kicker a chance? He's been perfect all year. It would be his career long, 1 yard longer than his 53-yard one he made 2 seasons ago. But I was still about it. Just why not? Why not give him the chance there and try and make it a 1-point game? I know it doesn't really do that much, but at the time anyway, you never know what the score's going to be at the end. And where you're thinking wow, they should have just tried going for that one field goal. How different it would have been. But I was content with that. Even if they didn't get it, I was like, well, I believe in the defense coming out of the second half. So.
Well, I definitely wasn't against it. I think I kind of made it clear that I didn't hate the idea of it. It's not what I would have done. There's a few factors to consider. Number one is that is longer than Chris Boswell's career long. Not to mention a 54 that 53-yarder made by Boswell in 2017 is the longest kick that's ever been made at Heinz Field. And the other thing to think about is, not that I'm that worried about it, but it's something to consider with kickers, because we didn't think it would be a problem for Boswell last year. But anytime you miss a kick, it makes you wonder. And I would really hope that something like this wouldn't end up ruining his confidence. I wouldn't expect the Steelers to live in their fears that way, as Mike Tomlin didn't, but just something that would have been on my mind. And the last thing, this is actually really the biggest reason why I would have punted instead if had it been my choice. Jordan Berry's been fantastic this year, and he had another really good game on Monday night. Averaged over 46 yards a punt. I think I would have trusted my team, my punt team, to try to down the Dolphins deep in their own territory and try to have another turnover or something like that. So again, I'm not trying to say I disagree with the call. It's just not what I would have done for a handful of reasons.
Yeah, there's a chance to get 2 possibly if you punt it there instead. You never know.
So with the benefit of hindsight, I think, it could also be a results bias thing where you say he missed it, you shouldn't have done it too. So I'm also trying to take that into account. But, I don't really think you could have gone wrong there, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Either way, I think that no one would have been really giving Tomlin the business for what his decision was there.
Play number 4. Oh, actually, then we had the ensuing interception by Ryan Fitzpatrick to Minkah Fitzpatrick. Minkah's 3rd of the season. And I don't know if you knew this, but the Steelers haven't had a defensive back record 4 or more interceptions, or any player record 4 or more interceptions in a season since 2010. That, of course, being Troy Polamalu. That is the longest streak in NFL history. Minkah now has 3.
Wow, yeah. I thought you were going to go the other stat. There hadn't been a defensive back for the Steelers that had 2 or more pass intercepted a safety for the Steelers who had intercepted a ball more than once in a game since 2010 when Troy Polamalu did it twice in a game. But that's insane. They're so close to getting rid of that. I hope that Minkah gets it next week and we could say that he blows it out of the water.
I mean, barring injury, I have to think he's going to do it easily.
Yeah, he should. He's got really good ball skills. This interception was pretty athletic. It was he was like the wide receiver on the route there. Minkah Fitzpatrick is really good at getting the ball.
If you watch Devin Bush's reaction, when that ball's in the air, he puts his hands up. He knows that Minka's going to come down with it, and I think that's kind of amazing. You know what else is really good about Fitzpatrick is his instincts. I honestly think, at least in terms of instincts and just ball skills, he is the best safety the Steelers have had since Troy.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the only argument you can really make is Ryan Clark, and that's it.
Yeah, and speaking of Clark, I wanted to kind of make a comparison. Clark was always the kind of quiet safety while Polamalu did all of his running around. What do you think about Terrell Edmonds? He's been kind of quiet this year, but the last 3 to 4 weeks he's been quiet, but in a good way too. Do you think he's sort of playing second fiddle like Ryan Clark did to Troy? And I'm not going to say he can't be better, but do you like where he's been lately?
I do, actually. I think that he's playing like Ryan Clark, where he's quiet to Minka Fitzpatrick, and I think that it's a good thing in this regard. I mean, there are still some questionable things on Minka's interception. Right there, I thought that he should have gotten over more, and he should have been the one with the interception, but that's nitpicking, and Minka was able to get there and get the interception anyway. But I still think Edmonds is doing well, playing next to him, doing well with him, and I do like Edmonds' development. He's not going to be an elite player, but I think he's been a good one.
I agree. I just, it's something I've been thinking about for a couple weeks now, and I don't really remember seeing him or hearing much about him on Monday night, but at the same time, as we've talked about with defensive backs, sometimes that is a good thing, and I think in this case, it has been so far.
Oh, 100% agree.
So the Steelers then probably have their most impressive drive of the season, a 12-play, 97-yard drive that results in a 26-yard pass from Mason Rudolph to Juju Smith-Schuster. This had a couple of big plays, including a 2nd and 20 pass to James Washington for 21 yards, a couple of solid runs by James Conner, and of course, I'd mentioned it already, that touchdown pass to Juju Smith-Schuster where he mossed that poor defender. I forgot who it was. I don't think it was Xavier Howard at that point.
I think Howard was hurt at this point. I'm pretty sure that was Lewis. He was got a cornerback out of Pitt, I'm pretty sure, as far as I know. But yeah, this drive was a very good one. Obviously, it ended with Juju mossing that poor corner, whoever he was, if we're wrong. But yeah, James Washington came up big in that. It was his only catch of the day, which was a little bit disappointing. But if you're going to make that your only catch of the day, I'll take it. A 21-yard gain, sure. I wish he did get a little bit more involved. He just targeted 6 times and only got that one catch. But I do appreciate that he was able to convert such a long one that probably would have ended the drive if not for his efforts there.
Does it feel like things are starting to come together a little bit? And if Rudolph, because we can get to this later, but he missed just a little bit on a couple of deep passes on the final drives of the game. If he starts hitting those, and I'm thinking specifically to a guy like James Washington, because I don't remember seeing Holton targeted in this game. I saw him on a couple plays, but I don't remember him being targeted. If you can get a couple of those to Washington a game, I think that'll really do wonders for this offense.
It might be. The bye week might have been the turning point for the Steelers' offense. I mean, it didn't look like it in the beginning, but we'll see if Mason Rudolph could just hit that deep ball to James Washington like he did at Oklahoma State. It's going to be amazing for this offense. You're exactly correct.
Probably the weirdest thing to happen all night. On a 4th and 1 from the Steelers 47, the Dolphins go for it. Ryan Fitzpatrick takes a bootleg out to the right side and scrambles and gets the first down. Or did he? Mike Tomlin challenges the play, and for the first time since I think the Dolphins playoff game in January of 2017, Mike Tomlin wins a challenge. Wow, that's incredible. But then the officials don't know what the hell they're doing. And we have a bizarre play where the quarter ends and then, oh wait, it didn't end, and now we have, we're finishing the review and now we don't know where the ball was spotted, so we have to re-spot it, bring in the chain gang again, and now it's the end of the quarter, and now we're taking, it was like a ridiculous 10-minute break here. I could have made myself dinner.
Yeah, it was really long, but I mean, it was still exciting because Mike Tomlin won a challenge, so I guess that's something there. But it really, everyone was confused there. It's just, this has been the NFL refs. If there was a one play to pick for how the NFL refs have been this season, I'd pick probably that one. So, it's expected at this point that they're going to do something dumb, make a dumb call, take forever on something,
It's very strange that Mike Tomlin's first one challenge in over 2 years was on a ball spot. That's usually a slippery slope where you don't see calls overturned, but I'll give it to him. It was a very good decision to challenge here, because that was it was another turning point, because the Steelers went down the field after that and scored another touchdown, and that was, of course, James Conner's touchdown, courtesy of another James Washington pancake block that put the Steelers up 10 and effectively put the game out of reach. I mean, it wasn't over, but now you were starting to feel a little comfortable.
Yeah, you feel like maybe one more turnover on the Dolphins drive and this game is over. But yeah, it was a really good drive there, and it was good for Mike Tomlin to challenge that, like you said. I thought he was short. I just thought it was going to be inconclusive when the refs looked at it. But good for him for winning it, and yeah, they were able to drive downfield and get that touchdown.
It's funny that we had just been talking about the officials. I completely forgot about. I think it was 2 plays before that touchdown at the end of the first half with Deontay Johnson. He made a spectacular one-handed catch down the sideline, which I think should have been a touchdown, but he was called for offensive pass interference, and it was a booth review on the pass interference because it was inside of 2 minutes. But I don't get how you can call that pass interference given the situation of knowing what pass interference reviews are like right now. I don't know how you can throw the flag there.
I don't know, man. Like we said, it's just every crew makes their own rules, and New York has their set of rules. So when it went to New York in the 2-minute drill there, it just you don't really know, because that crew is calling it different than New York probably would have called it. This is the problem with the pass interference rule, that you could review it. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. It's like, well, it's going to New York, so I guess maybe we'll lose this one. Or actually, it's more likely that you'll win this one. I'm pretty sure the announcers on the broadcast had said that when it goes to New York, 4 out of 7 of the times it's happened, it's been overturned, whatever it was called. So there was actually a higher chance it was overturned compared to when the actual refs looked at it when it was challenged. But,
And for everyone saying that the coaches shouldn't challenge these anymore, I've read somewhere that the Colts challenged one last week and it got overturned. So who knows what the NFL is doing with this stuff, man? You just do not know.
No clue, dude.
So back to the game, the situation, the Steelers up 24-14, the Dolphins get the ball back. They start moving the ball here, and things are getting kind of, maybe you're a little concerned here because the Dolphins are now at midfield, and Fitzpatrick makes a nice pass, finds Mark Walton inside Steelers territory, but Mike Hilton makes a fantastic play, punches the ball out, and Steven Nelson recovers it, and that pretty much ends any hope for the Dolphins. The Steelers don't really do much beyond that at that point, but the defense turns up the heat after that with T.J. Watt coming in with a fantastic individual effort, picking up 2 sacks and a forced fumble and recovery, and the Steelers end up cruising to that 27-14 victory. 27 straight points for the Steelers after that 14-0 hole. You know what? It might not have been pretty, and they deserve criticism for the slow start, but I also think the Steelers deserve a lot of credit for being able to look that adversity in the face and to be able to turn things around the way that they did, because it could have been very easy for them to struggle all game long, like we have seen them do against inferior teams in the past.
You know what I was thinking about? So, coming into this game, Nelson didn't have a turnover recorded. It's kind of, how many turnovers do you think the Steelers would have had if I were to come back from the future, go to me and you in the past and say, it is week 7.5 and Steven Nelson has no turnovers, and then I leave it on that. I don't say anything else. How many turnovers do you think this defense would have had?
Definitely less than 10.
Yeah, so that's kind of crazy. I mean, Steven Nelson kind of rebranded himself with the Steelers. He's a shutdown corner, which was not expected coming into this year. But shout out to him for getting that recovery over there. I was rooting for Minka to get it because I had a bold prediction that Minka would get 3 turnovers in this game, and he had 2 at that point. But you know what? At the end of the day, I just want the Steelers to recover the ball. Whoever gets a turnover gets a turnover. But yeah, kind of crazy that the Steelers were able to score 27 unanswered. The defense rallied, the offense rallied. I don't know how much of it was Xavier Howard getting hurt, but you know what? I'll take it. I will take this.
So the defense now has 19 turnovers on the year through 7 games. Remember, they had 15 in 16 games last year. What a difference it's made.
It really has been. I mean, it's basically the only reason why the Steelers are not 0-7 right now, if we're being honest.
7 different players have intercepted a pass this year.
That is also crazy to think about. The Jugs machine has definitely worked out.
And I mean, I'm almost entirely certain that's more than last year because the Steelers had Joe Hayden, Vince Williams, Bud Dupree, Mike Hilton, Terrell Edmonds, Sean Davis. I think that's 6 players right there. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players right there. So, I mean, that's just interceptions. It's not even like sacks and whatnot. So, I mean, that magic number of 25 that we were talking about preseason, yeah, they're going to absolutely blow that away.
Oh, don't jinx it. You never know.
I mean,
but yeah, it seems like they are going to blow this out of the water and get to 25. Hopefully they could just fix their record. The most important stat of all is W's, and if they could just get to the postseason, that'd be dope.
Defense has been obviously the catalyst. They have 24 sacks on the season. That bold, thought of possibly 60 is that might need a game or two of 8 or 9 sacks for that to be realistic. But still, 24 sacks at this point of the season, definitely not bad.
No, not at all. A little bit slower than the past 2 years. We've kind of been spoiled with the Steelers having the best sack defense, but they're still on track to be one of the league's top ones.
One thing I will say is that even though they don't have a ton of sacks, they have a ton of pressure. Like that Chargers game, they had 1 sack, but they were pressuring Phillip Rivers all night.
Yeah, and also you get to verse the Browns twice and Bengals one more time, so you could always stat pad there if you need to.
Indeed. So over the course of the season so far, the Steelers are averaging just under 3.5 sacks per game. So over a 16-game schedule, that's a little over 50 sacks, I believe. Right?
They're averaging 3.5 sacks, you said?
Wait a minute. Did I do that right? I'm 24 divided by 7. That is 3.42857, long number. But if you multiply that number by 16, that's still 54 sacks.
Yeah, that's pretty solid.
I'd say that's more than they had last year, so maybe I was wrong about them. I mean, I guess they are maybe a little slow than we would have expected, but still at the same time, they're cruising. Although they did lose Stephon Tuitt, but they had 4 sacks last Monday night.
Yeah, exactly. So they should be fine. They should be able to keep the sacks up. They're just not going to be top in the league because the league has gotten a little bit better with the stuff. The Panthers are going nuts.
One thing I will say about the offense is that we did see Mason Rudolph air it out down the field a lot in this game.
Oh, yeah, and I kind of like that. I kind of like seeing him airing it out. Like, there's been questions of whether he's, confident doing that, and I like seeing him attempting those passes. I mean, it didn't really work in this game, but they were close. There's definitely passes where I was like, ooh, just a little bit off the mark.
Time will tell, of course, with the Colts coming to town next week, just how legit this offense is. But, one game at a time, and the Steelers are still alive. Next week will be the Steelers' halfway point of the season. Hard to believe already.
Yeah, man. It sucks. Football's already halfway done. The regular season,
It is indeed. And, of course, let's get into the NFL Week 8 slate of games. We had already talked about the Redskins and Vikings matchup. Let's get into the 1 p.m. games. The Seahawks take care of business against the Falcons. The Seahawks win 27-20, and they fell asleep in the second half and felt like they kind of gave up, didn't even care, and they were still able to win by a touchdown. The Falcons, I am kind of surprised Dan Quinn hasn't been fired yet. I don't know what's going on there.
I don't know. I guess they're still like pretending like that their Super Bowl. The Super Bowl hasn't happened, I guess, that far in the past. So they're like, yeah, he was a Super Bowl coach at one point. I don't know. I don't know.
The Eagles had an impressive win in Buffalo. The Eagles, whenever their backs are against the wall, they play their best, and they pummel the Bills 31-13 in Orchard Park. I didn't see this one coming.
I didn't see it being this bad. I had a feeling the Eagles would win because of that, because the Eagles won against the Packers when they probably shouldn't have. Like you said, they just play best when they're doubted highly. I guess they weren't doubted highly coming into this game, but still, I think most people thought the Bills were going to be able to win this one with their defense and how they were performing and how Philadelphia just got blown out by Dallas like the week before. But yeah, Philadelphia just plays better when they're considered the underdog.
The Chargers and Bears had a combined 8 losses in 2018. They already have 8 losses combined going into Week 8. Not a good season for either team, but the Chargers come away with a 1-point victory after kicking Woe's return for Eddie Pinheiro and the Chicago Bears after a questionable decision by Matt Nagy to kneel on the ball with the timeout left instead of trying to get a little closer. The Bears fall to 3-4 on the season, while the Chargers improved to 3-5.
Yeah, the Bears are just a mess. Both these teams are really just a mess. But it's until the Bears get a new quarterback, I think they're just not going to be able to be a contender at the moment. Like, their defense just isn't playing like it was last year. But like, they're still really good, and they're still what carries that team. It's just the Bears offense just needs to get it together.
Yeah, the Bears' defense hasn't been as great as people were thinking they would be. They've still been really good. But their offense, the scheme, the talent outside of quarterback has been awful, and Mitch Trubisky has regressed to his rookie season form. Whatever was passable in his second season last year, he's worse than that now. There's something wrong, and he has been just plain awful. And never forget that the Bears traded up one spot to take him while Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes were on the board.
Yeah, you really hate to see it, Chief. You could have traded back to 14 and still gotten Mahomes and then draft capital. But all's fun in retrospect.
The Bears are going to be kicking themselves for years because of that. But in any case, the Bengals drop to 0-8 on the year. They become the first team to guarantee not having a winning record in their first season under Zach Taylor. The Rams win in unimpressive fashion over in London, 24-10. Cooper Kupp has a day.
Yeah, I can't say I didn't see this coming. The Rams just absolutely destroyed and manhandled this poor, broken, sad-looking team.
So that Tank Bowl matchup with the Bengals and Dolphins is looking quite appealing now, isn't it?
It really is. That's week 15, right? Or week 16?
It's not the final week of the season, but it's either 15 or 16.
Yeah, I can't wait. I hope it's flexed to prime time.
I hope it's a tie.
Great.
I wonder what happens if... I don't know. Let's not even get into that. The Broncos and Dolphins squared off in a surprisingly close game. The Broncos' defense keeps them in it, but Jacoby Brissett and the Colts come away with the victory after Adam Vinatieri rebounds from 2 more missed kicks to boot the Colts to their 5th win of the season. Joe Flacco criticizes the coaching staff afterwards for not being aggressive enough. He is now out for a handful of weeks with a neck injury.
Yeah, honestly, this game was kept way closer than I thought. Broncos' defense has been playing really well as of late, which I guess I should expect, but I feel like they were so bad in the beginning of the year, it's just hard for me to picture. But they really kept Jacoby in check, and they kept the Colts in check, and they probably should have won this, like, for sure. I thought that the Broncos were actually going to come and beat the Colts, but Colts were able to rally and win. I mean, you live by the sword and you die by the sword. Adam Vinatieri was nearly the sword for the Colts. He missed an extra point and a field goal in that game. before skinning a long 55-yard one and getting a game-sealing one. So good for them for sticking with Vinatieri and him bouncing back in this game.
The old man lives on. Vinatieri's legend continues to grow. You know, I think he's the only active player in any sport that was born in the 70s, I think, or at least prior to 75.
Oh, what about I don't know basketball enough. He used to be a Hawk. Like he broke the record for most seasons played in the NBA now with 22 seasons. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do not. I'm not a big NBA guy.
Yeah,
I forget
I'm not big
exactly
enough
what
to
it
know
was.
anyway.
Oh, you know what? Maybe it was the 1960s. Crap, what was it? I'm sorry, I have to look this up now. Adam Vinatieri, born 1972. It must have been He must have been the only person born 1975 or older, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. His first season was the year I was born, to give you an idea. So he's been kicking since before you existed.
Damn, bro.
In any case, the Giants and Lions came together for a game that ended up being closer than I think most people thought. A defensive touchdown for the Lions gave them the victory, and they are able to stop their backslide. They're now back to 3-3-1 on the year.
Yeah, this is kind of surprising. Oh, just to go back for a second, the basketball player I was thinking of was Vince Carter. He is 42. I don't know when he was born, but that was who I was thinking of, and it was going to bother me if I didn't look it up.
Oh, you know who could be? Actually, you know what? I was just checking. You remember Jaromir Jagr?
Yeah, the hockey player.
He was born the same year as Vinatieri.
Oh, really?
Yep, 1972. Go on though.
But going back to the Giants and the Lions here, I was surprised. I didn't think that the Giants were going to be able to keep up, even without the Lions being without Darius Slay. But you know what? They were able to keep it pretty close, I'd say. So good for them. I really didn't see it coming.
In a matchup of what should have been the two much maligned first two picks from the 2015 NFL Draft, Marcus Mariota had to ruin it by being benched. So instead, we just saw Jameis Winston and good old Ryan Tannehill and the Titans win 27-23 after a Jameis Winston interception towards the end of the game. And another instance where the officials blew the whistle too soon on a fumble that could have resulted in either a chance for the Buccaneers to win the game or potentially the game-winning touchdown.
I mean, is there ever really a game? Is it really a Buccaneers game if famous Jameis doesn't open up his bakery for some turnovers? Like, this is really, like, it's just not characteristic of a Bucs game if Jameis Winston's not throwing some picks here. I am still disappointed. I thought that the Buccaneers could pull this one out. I thought they were the better team, but I was wrong.
What did you think about that call where they blew the whistle too early again?
It's how it be. It happened. I mean, we didn't talk about it. It happened in the end of the Steelers game too. I don't know if Cameron Sutton didn't have a pick six in the end of the Dolphins game. You know?
Yeah, I feel like this. I feel like the situation though, because the Buccaneers didn't win, I'm kind of shocked this isn't being talked about more. I'm worried that it's just kind of it happens now. You know?
Yeah, we're just gonna accept it. We know that the refs are bad, so we're just gonna move on.
The Arizona Cardinals kept it close with the New Orleans Saints from the first half, but then decided to go for it on a 4th and short from deep in their own territory, and when they didn't convert it, that was pretty much it. The Saints and Drew Brees laid a whooping on the Cardinals from that point on.
Yeah, I felt good about my pick early on, and then it just came downhill and smacked me straight in the face when the Saints won 31-9. I'm not betting against them losing Alvin Kamara as a reason they're going to be bad ever again, because Latavius Murray is a pretty solid backup, as good as a backup as you could get, I would say. So, and not Bridgewater. Drew Brees came back, despite me thinking that was a mistake. To be fair, I think if I knew Brees was going to play, which I really thought they were going to do the smart thing and bench him, well, I guess it's not smart in retrospect. They blew him out and he's fine, but I think I would have changed my pick if I knew Breeze was playing. But anyway, Breeze came back, did Breeze things, and helped the team win 31-9.
So what you're saying about the Kamara thing is that running backs are replaceable.
Running backs are very replaceable. Latavius Murray, if these were his first 2 games and he was a rookie, he would look amazing right now.
Indeed. The Jets continue to look terrible, and the Jaguars roll to a 4-4 record with a 29-15 victory over the New York Jets. And with each passing week, that win over the Cowboys looks more and more like an aberration, and I wish I hadn't seen so much of it because it's influenced my pick the last few weeks with the Jets, and I gotta stop doing that.
Yeah, man. The Jets are bad, and they should feel bad. They're surprisingly it feels even worse with Sam Darnold right now. Like, at least with Luke Falk and the other quarterbacks, that they could say, oh, it's just our quarterback situation, that's why we're bad. Like, no, now they're just plain bad, and there's no excuses.
Yeah, that is an awful football team. The Dolphins will have a chance to win games because, remember, they played the Jets twice, not to mention the Bengals. So the Dolphins all of a sudden could come up with 3 wins if they're not careful.
The Brian Flores and their GM is clutching everything because they're scared they're going to win a game.
The Jets are certainly going to give them a run for their money. Probably the most hotly anticipated matchup between the Panthers and 49ers. I got to be honest with you, I felt more confident about this game than I did any other game this week, and I was proven right over the course of the game. The 49ers front absolutely mangled the Carolina Panthers and Kyle Allen's offense. And on the other side, the Panthers defense didn't have any answers for Tevin Coleman, who just went off.
Yeah, man. Nick Bosa's got to stop playing so good. It's hurting Devin Bush's chance of winning Defensive Player of the Year. Right now, it's coming down to Nick Bosa versus Devin Bush, and Nick Bosa has the advantage right now because he's playing out of his mind. Stats might not say it, but because of the position difference and the pressure that Nick Bosa is forcing, Bosa's right now favored to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, I should say. But
he's
got to slow down. But regardless, the 49ers are a true competitor, and they are who I'm going to be rooting for from the NFC because I think that they have the best chance of beating the Patriots at the moment. So I'm going to be rooting for them. Anything could change. You never know. But I'm rooting for them.
This is the most complete team in the league right now.
Yeah, it's a shame because the position that they probably worst at is the most important. But even that is manageable. With Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, it's manageable.
We haven't even the thing is, we haven't even seen a situation where he has to take the reins yet. And if they play tough games against the Saints and Seahawks and Rams, and they'll play the Rams again. If there's a situation where he has to ball out and he does, this has to be the Super Bowl favorite.
I think so too. I think they're just the best team, and I'm kind of looking forward to it. I feel like them and the Saints, that Saints game could be like a matchup for the NFC Championship going forward. You never know.
Definitely could be. One team that had its eyes on the AFC Championship game at the season's start was the Cleveland Browns, and a season of hype in the offseason anyways has led to a disappointing 2-5 start. This time a 27-13 defeat at the hands of the Patriots. The final score and really the way the game was played after the first 10 minutes was relatively even. The Browns kept things close, but as it has been all year, the Browns beat themselves with turnovers on 3 consecutive snaps, including 2 horrible fumbles by Nick Chubb and maybe the saddest interception I've ever seen on a pass that was thrown maybe 2 yards away from Baker Mayfield. It's a distance I'm sitting from pretty much me to my door right now, and somehow the pass was intercepted.
Yeah, the Browns are definitely not contenders anymore. If they just got their turnovers under control, they would actually probably be a contender still, because that's been a problem. Baker's 6 touchdowns for 12 interceptions, and then Nick Chubb had 2 fumbles in this game alone. It's been rough for them, but honestly, they had a respectable score. What can we say? The Steelers only put 3 points up on New England, and New England put up 33 on Pittsburgh, so it was still respectable, but Browns have met reality, and I'm happy for that.
The Oakland Raiders and Houston Texans had a sneaky good game on the schedule. The Raiders putting up a good fight after struggling in a loss to the Aaron Rodgers-led Packers last week, but again, a difference maker at the quarterback position means the difference for a team playing the Raiders and not for the Raiders. This time it's Deshaun Watson, who after getting kicked in the eye on a play is able to still roll out and complete the game-winning touchdown pass. That was something else to watch, I tell you what.
Deshaun Watson is a great quarterback. I didn't think he was going to turn out that way at all, but he is a great quarterback. Amazing, actually. He is probably one of the top 3 in the league right now, and that's insane for me to say, but he is playing well, and I feel like his line has been playing well as well, which is important. They gave up 3 sacks in this game, but in the past 3 weeks, including that week, they've given up 3 sacks. So this Texans team, despite keeping it close with Oakland, their offense at least is very scary.
You know, it's funny. Deshaun Watson went off in 2017, had a pretty solid rookie season, and then had that bad season-ending knee injury. And while he was recovering from that, he had a solid year last year, but everyone fell in love with Patrick Mahomes. It's like everyone forgot about Deshaun Watson, and here he is possibly making a case for an MVP this season. And, you know, all of a sudden we could have another Peyton Manning, Tom Brady type of rivalry between Watson and Mahomes over the next, decade if we're lucky enough. These two players are very exciting, and they play differently, and that's what's kind of cool to see.
Yeah, it is really cool. I do like that. I hope it's a matchup that lasts long, just like Brady's and Manning's.
Sunday Night Football, what was supposed to be a matchup between Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes in a shootout, ended up being still a relatively entertaining game between Rodgers and Matt Moore. The Packers pull out a 31-24 victory. The Chiefs fall to 5-3 on the year and just 1 win at home this season, while the Packers roll to 7-1 on the year. So, 2 teams heading in opposite directions, but still a good showing from the Chiefs, all things considered.
Yeah, man, and they're going to get better. Superhuman Patrick Mahomes should be back in a week or maybe 2 because he's superhuman. But this game, like you said, was actually entertaining. I wasn't expecting that. I always respected Matt Moore. I remember going to the playoff game a few years ago with Matt Moore. I was like, I actually like him better than Tannehill. I don't know if that still stands. I feel like it actually does. But, I still like Matt Moore. So he made it entertaining.
He's definitely a quality NFL backup, but in any case, that will wrap up. Oh, did we? I'm trying to think. In this week, did I even include? Yeah, I did. Okay. I was just thinking about because when we had the overall records, I always forget to add the Steelers game in, but I think I did. So, all right. So this week, in terms of picks against the spread, you were 9-6, and I was 6-9.
Nice.
Yeah, right. You're 62-59 on the year. I'm 55-66. So still kind of close, but you've had a really good season so far.
Yeah, it's not been bad. When you take away a whole result, they could actually be above 500. It's nice.
Indeed. So Steelers news, just a couple of notes to get to. The first thing is that the Steelers have signed running back Darren Hall, formerly from the University of Pittsburgh, to the practice squad, and has cut tight end Kevin Rader from the practice squad. So just a little bit about Darren Hall. I looked at him in the pre-draft process. He's not a big play guy. I thought that he was going to be a late-round draft pick. He went undrafted. He spent some time, I forget where, but I think Cleveland was one of the teams he had spent time with in the preseason. Not a big play guy, but he's strong and he's a good downhill runner. I don't know if he has a future with the Steelers. I don't know how much he plays on special teams, but I would not have been surprised if you had told me back around the time of the draft that he'd have ended up in Pittsburgh at some point on some sort of practice squad or roster. So kind of weird, but here we are. So Darren Hall on the Steelers practice squad. I don't know if you saw any highlights of Darren Hall at Pitt, but he was a big play guy. That's not something that's going to translate, but his highlights are fun to watch.
I'm pretty sure I actually did watch highlight of Hall when we actually looked at when you looked at him pre-draft. I'm pretty sure you showed me some because you told me he wasn't fast, but he still got big gains.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because Quadri Olison, who's now in Atlanta, him and Darren Hall had this two-headed monster kind of deal, and Olison is actually, I think, the faster player, but for whatever reason, Darren Hall had these ridiculous, like a ton of long runs, including like a 97-yard run against Virginia Tech last season. It was just one of those weird like oddities where for some reason, even though Hall's not fast, he broke off a ton of big plays. So will that translate? I mean, I doubt it, but maybe that's just something that can happen. I don't know. I just like seeing it because Pittsburgh is my favorite college football team, and I love seeing those guys make their way to my favorite pro team, obviously. So do you have any thoughts on this move?
No, not really.
I'm just happy. No offense to Kevin Rader, but I'm just glad he's gone.
Me too.
Also, the domestic violence-related charges that outside linebacker Anthony Chickalo has been facing, they've been dropped. His future is still unclear because the league is still investigating, and based on the league's inconsistent punishments, we're probably not going to know what's going on with Chickalo for a while, but he is on the commissioner's exempt list, so he's not currently on the active roster. So until we hear something, this is pretty much going to be the status quo for a while.
Yep. I mean, we're just going to play the waiting game.
All right, let's jump into NFL news and notes. The Dolphins were minus one of their top running backs, Kenyon Drake, but that's because they traded him just before the Steelers and Dolphins kicked off a few hours before. They traded him to the Arizona Cardinals for a conditional draft pick in 2020. NFL reporter Ian Rappaport later clarified that the pick is currently a sixth-round pick, but could become a fifth-round pick in 2020. The further details are not known at this time, but speculation is that it could become a fifth if Drake re-signs with the Cardinals in the offseason. The Cardinals are dealing with injuries to their top two running backs in David Johnson and Chase Edmonds at this time, so Drake is expected to contribute on Thursday night against the San Francisco 49ers. What do you think about this trade?
Even crazier, right? So I didn't watch any of the Cardinals game. I knew that David Johnson was hurt and that he was likely to be out 2-3 games. All right, that was reported before the game. So Chase Edmonds got hurt. Okay, and I see the Kenyon Drake trade happen. They put running back DJ Foster on IR after the Kenyon Drake trade as well. So they had, I don't think they had a running back left on the roster. I think DJ Foster got hurt in that game too. I'm pretty sure going into this game, Kenyon Drake might be the only running back on the roster. I'd have to actually check that.
No, they have Alfred Morris for sure.
Oh, they do?
I'm pretty sure, because I have him in on one of my fantasy teams. I'm going to just actually read what it says, because I remember trying to figure out, should I even bother starting him on a Thursday night? Okay, here we go. Kingsbury said he expects to take a running back by committee approach involving Zach Zenner and Alfred Morris behind Kenyon Drake on Thursday.
They had to just sign Zenner, because I'm pretty sure that he wasn't there. But, wow, interesting. Okay, good to know. But they lost so many running backs so quickly. 2 games, they lost 3 running backs. One to IR, one's out multiple weeks, and the other's out multiple weeks. It's kind of crazy. And shout out to the Dolphins for getting anything for Kenyon Drake, and never mind anything. They got a 5th-round pick that's not even a 7th. I'm shocked and proud of them, and with how desperate the Cardinals are the Dolphins are able to capitalize. Good for them.
The tank continues to roll on, and it continues to roll on in probably the biggest kind of move you could ever make for a team that's tanking. You want to tank? Trade for a player who's on injured reserve. That's something the Dolphins did this week. And the only trade deadline day deal that we saw was cornerback Aqib Talib from the Los Angeles Rams, who has broken ribs on injured reserve, went to the Miami Dolphins with a 5th-round pick for a 2022 7th-round pick. And if you're confused, this move is akin to the one we saw the Houston Texans make in 2017 when they shipped Brock Osweiler and a 2nd-round pick to the Cleveland Browns. That way they could take his contract off their hands. Aqib Talib still has $4.2 million on the rest of his deal. So Talib and a 5th-round pick to the Dolphins for a 2022 7th-round pick. So what do you think of this move?
I think the Rams just don't like draft picks, but I mean, it makes sense. It allows them to actually re-sign Jalen Ramsey. You can't let Jalen Ramsey leave after this season after you paid 2 firsts and a 4. So they need to clear up space, and they need to clear it up ASAP and pay Jalen Ramsey before their fans revolt against them. But, I mean, again, good for the Dolphins to be able to move around. And honestly, if they want, Talib can play this year. He was expected to come back from IR, so I doubt they'll do that. I doubt they'll designate him to return since they want to lose. And I doubt Talib even wants to play for them at all anyway. So Talib's going to be a free agent after this season, so he's probably going to move on and go wherever he wants to go.
You don't think I think there's a chance he could end up back in Miami, though, because of the no state tax. And because, remember, he played in New England, a lot of former, Patriots, coaching staff, members are in Miami. And that's part of the reason why he ended up with the Rams. He either wanted to sign with the Rams or the Patriots because of all that familiarity with the coaching staff. So I think it's possible he might think about staying there.
I'm going to say he goes back to Denver. I'm going to say he goes back to Denver because they need cornerback help very badly, and there's familiarity there. Or he goes to the Cowboys. Nah, I just say Denver.
All right, so just a quick rundown of everything else that's going on in the NFL. You see Jamal Adams is pissed at the Jets for, quote-unquote, going behind his back about receiving or talking about offers for Jamal Adams in a trade with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I did see he was pissed. I sort of understand, sort of don't. I'm kind of in the middle on that. It's just like everybody has a price. Everybody. And he said in his quote that the Patriots don't take calls for Tom Brady, which is technically untrue. The 49ers sent out an offer for Tom Brady when they wouldn't trade Jimmy Garoppolo originally. So, I mean, they'll at least hear him. I mean, they obviously said no, but, like, I don't know, man. Every team has a price for a player is what I'm trying to say.
I completely agree with you. So, like, I get that he's upset, but at the same time, that's just the way it is,
Yeah, but you do kind of want that loyalty out of a player. Like, he wants to be a Jet, and the Jets are a miserable team. They're a very sad team, and he still wants to be there. Part of me thinks he's going to end his contract with the Jets and be a New York Giant, since he said he wanted to stay in New York.
Do you think maybe the front office could have done something better about trying to keep that under wraps?
Yeah, they probably should have been a little bit more quiet about it, or something like that.
Andy Dalton is upset too because on his birthday, the day of the trade deadline day, he was benched for quarterback Ryan Finley and wasn't traded. And his thoughts were, if you're going to bench me, couldn't you have at least traded me?
Did he actually say that?
Not exactly, but actually I don't think that's exactly what he said, but he was upset. Hold on, let me pull up the actual article. I had accidentally closed it here. Dalton upset with benching before trade deadline. He called his benching in favor of Ryan Finley an unfortunate thing. The Cincinnati Bengals quarterback wasn't thrilled about this decision, but specifically sounded perturbed at the timing of the move rather than the team's decision to take a long look at the rookie quarterback. Dalton noted that the Bengals' decision to bench him hours before Tuesday's trade deadline hindered his ability to potentially seek a new place of employment this year where he might continue to start. I wish they would have at least, if he was thinking about it, at least try to let me see if I could end up somewhere, or at least see if there was interest in possibly being traded. At that point, the way it was all handled, there wasn't enough time for that to even happen.
Yikes.
So take that for what you will.
Yeah, I did think they did Andy Dalton wrong. I know that they didn't bench him because he was bad, and he wasn't bad. Like he's not the reason the Bengals are winless right now. They said they wanted to see what they got in Ryan Finley.
I.e. they're tanking.
Yeah, they're trying to tank. They're trying to beat out the Dolphins. They're like, well, the Dolphins are winless. We're winless still. We still have a shot at this. And they're also in the process. Well, let's see if Ryan Finley can work out. If he doesn't, we're getting Tua, basically, or what they're doing. Cause, I mean, Chase Young is the best guy in the draft, hands down. But I mean, I don't know if the Bengals would take Chase Young when maybe their only position group on their team that's set is defensive line. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what they do. They don't exactly need a quarterback either, but here they are.
We'll see. Like I said, I thought Andy Dalton starting Pittsburgh earlier last month was going to be his last in a Bengals uniform, and I think that's going to be true.
I think you're right, my friend.
Baker Mayfield stormed out of a press conference today. Did you see that?
I did see that as well, yes.
Any thoughts?
No, they're crumbling under pressure, the Browns.
I think it's being made a bigger deal than it needs to be, but the Browns are a lightning rod for it, and they aren't doing anything to make it less of a problem.
Not at all.
So Trent Williams finally reported to the Redskins, mostly, I would assume, just to be able to get a year accrued for his contract so it doesn't toll. And surprise, surprise, he had a physical today, and he failed it because of quote-unquote helmet discomfort. Okay.
Yeah, Trent Williams already came out and said he has no plan to come and play this year. He only showed up just to get the season accrued and get out of here quicker. The Redskins are dumb, man. The Redskins should have just traded him when apparently they had a first on the table, and then they were only getting second-round offers, and they jerked around. They're idiots, and they jerked around. They went to the Browns, said, yeah, we'll take a first and Denzel Ward for Trent Williams. Like, no, this is not how it works. You guys are the idiots. You need to take what you can and don't jerk around. And asking for Denzel Ward in a first, you're being an idiot. You're absolutely stupid. And the people that own the Redskins, Bruce Allen, just needs to give up the team. For the Redskins to finally be good again, to actually be a decent team, this team needs to be re-owned. And maybe moved, honestly, but you're not going to move it out of the Washington market regardless. Just really needs to be sold. I hate the Redskins now.
Yeah, they absolutely botched this, and dysfunctional organizations do dysfunctional things, and this is laughable, man. They're a joke, and everyone knows they're a joke.
Honestly, the whole league is laughing at them.
As they should. And last thing is the Dolphins' best player, Xavier Howard, went to injured reserve. So, is there any good player left on that team?
Pretty much no. I mean, Jerome Baker actually played pretty good in the Pittsburgh game, so maybe he's a pretty solid guy. But no, the Dolphins saw that the Bengals were benching Andy Dalton and were like, bet. And then they put Xavier Howard to IR. They're like, no, you guys aren't winning this.
It has certainly been a strange season, but one that continues on with Thursday Night Football in Week 9, an NFC West showdown. The San Francisco 49ers look to improve to 7-0. 7-0, right? Or is it 8-0?
7-0, I want to say.
Actually, I think it's 8-0 because this is Week 9 and they've already had their bye, so that means they'd be 8-0.
You're right.
So the Niners are going for 8-0, and the Cardinals, Lord have mercy, with all their running back problems, they're 9.5-point underdogs at home, and I think I'm going to take the Niners, man. I like Kyler Murray. I like what they've been able to do this year, but that defense of the Niners is going to absolutely smother them. And on the other side, they just need to keep running the ball with success, and I think the Cardinals' defense isn't good enough to stop them.
Yeah, I think it's possible the 49ers win here by 4 scores, like 20 points here. Yeah, 49ers are covering. I think I would have had this line as a little bit bigger for me to want to even think about Arizona. I think it would have had to be at like 14 for me to consider picking Arizona plus the points here. And even then, I think Arizona's going to. I think San Francisco is going to win by 20.
Let's hope that the Cardinals can at least keep them competitive for a half then, right?
Yeah, I guess that's what we're hoping for here. The Redskins were able to keep them down to 9 points because of the rain. Let's hope for more rain here, boys.
Rain in a dome?
Yeah, dude. That fake rain, that real good one.
All the rain they get in Glendale, Arizona?
Yes, sir.
Maybe pigs will fly too. But then at that point, we'll be talking about the Browns in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, man.
All right, so we are now approaching Week 9 of the NFL season. The Steelers are going to be looking to get to 500 at 4-4 against the Indianapolis Colts. They're not an impressive team, but they're getting the job done. It's not going to be an easy game on Sunday.
No, not at all. The Colts are a pretty good team, especially they're kind of underrated, I think. I feel like a lot of people are not considering that they're that good. And because I don't know, they open up as 1.5 point favorites over the Steelers, and I would have opened them up at probably 3. I don't know. I think they're being a little disrespected.
All right, well, time will tell how the matchup turns out, but of course, until then, if you have any questions about the show, please feel free to check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. Check out our episodes posted on SoundCloud and YouTube, and feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com with any questions or concerns about the show or the Steelers themselves as well. Austin, thank you so much for joining me again tonight, and we're on to Week 9 of the NFL season. It's on to Indianapolis Colts week.
Yes, sir. Just one more thing I wanted to say. Watch out for Sean Davis news. His 21-day window is probably going to open up soon. I'm pretty sure they're going to take him off IR.
You think they're going to designate him to return? So he'd probably be, he's definitely going to be the dime player whenever that happens.
Yeah, man. I think they're going to bring him back.
Interesting. How much better can he make the defense, do you think?
I don't know. I don't think he's going to really have that big of an effect, but he's still a pretty solid player, and having him back as a backup would be solid.
He's not coming back next year.
Oh, Sean Davis? No.
You know, it's weird. The way the top 3 picks of the 2016 draft started in their rookie season, to think that all 3 of them are going to be in a different uniform come next season is kind of surprising.
It is. They all had so much hope at one point, and only Javon Hargrave remains as the one with hope left, but he's just not going to be able to be paid.
Indeed, but in any case, until next time, thank you, as always, for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast.
Have a good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.